Hi, everyone, and welcome to our latest Family Matters interview series. Today, we are being joined by Mindy Felinton. Welcome, Mindy.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're so excited to hear your topic today. I know you're going to be sharing some expert legal information for our older adults and our families. So, welcome to Family Matters.
Thank you so much. I welcome this opportunity.
Thanks for being here. Let's start off with maybe you can tell our families just a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do in your practice to support families and older adults with long-term care planning.
Sure. Great. So I have come to this area of law as my focus in my law practice after 42 years from a variety of situations that have arisen both in my life and friends' lives. For example, my dad, who served in World War II, allowed my mom the opportunity to look at getting some veterans benefits because she was a surviving spouse. He also was someone, my dad, who unfortunately passed when I was only 17,
Oh,
who had made a plan for his ultimate demise, which allowed me to be able to go on to college and law school. He had a plan in place, he had a will, he had a trust. So those were all things that resonated with me because it again afforded me the opportunity to be able to continue my education. Now, unfortunately, I have had a brother who passed away at 56 from a heart attack, and he did not plan. So we were left cleaning up his mess and dealing with all of the emotional things surrounding that. So I saw what it looked like not to plan, what it looked like to plan. And I know how important it is for everyone to be aware of what the proper planning is for their situation. So the final piece that led me into not only doing, I say I wear two hats, the estate planning hat, but I wear an elder law hat as well. So estate planning is more about planning for when I pass away, to whom I'm leaving my money, how I'm leaving my money. But along comes a friend of mine with a phone call. Mindy, I don't know what I'm going to do. David's going to need nursing care, and I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. It's $15,000 a month. I'm afraid I'm going to have to sell my house to pay for his care. And I said,
I think a lot of
Eleanor,
families are in that boat.
yes, absolutely. But people are unaware of the fact that not only can they plan in advance for that possibility, so they're not left penniless, but they can also still do planning even if they're already in that situation. It's sometimes more challenging to save as much as we can had they planned in advance. So hopefully we have time today to look at briefly what planning in advance can look like. But I said to her, I don't know what to do in that situation. I know how to prepare wills, trusts, powers of attorney, medical powers of attorney, and we hopefully will touch on those today and what they
Right.
all do. But I'm going to find out. And that's what led me to start exploring the elder law side, which is how am I going to pay for care and not go broke? And so I've been helping families navigate that process and find it extremely rewarding because those people who didn't plan in advance are extremely stressed. They are dealing with their loved one having medical and or mental problems. They're not knowing how to deal with the financial piece. So I find it so rewarding to be able to provide peace of mind and solutions for everybody, both on the estate planning side and the elder law side. So long-winded answer, but us lawyers, we have to
I mean,
elaborate.
the good news, or the bad news, I guess, either way you look at it, I mean, you have personal experience. You've been on the other side of these scenarios and situations. You've been the family member. You've been, looking for information similar to the families that are listening today. So you've sort of been in their shoes, you know the struggles, you know the stress, you know the
Yep.
solutions that they're looking for. So that makes you uniquely qualified to help support them because you've already sort of experienced this yourself. So I think that, that's a great um, advantage to sort of the work that you do. Mindy,
Thank
I
you.
know I know a lot of older adults, who are listening to this today may be thinking about creating that customized plan, the one you just described, for their family or for a loved one. How do they get started? How do they determine their needs and the personal goals that they have for their estate planning or for their family? Are there certain considerations that they should start with? How do they get the conversation going?
Okay, great question. So, and I'll just kind of relate that to the process that I use in working with loved ones and families and our, potential clients, where I actually have them prepare a questionnaire for me or form they fill out. And it's really key because in that form, I am asking them particular questions and rating how important these things are to them. Is it extremely important? Is it important, very important, or not important at all? And so they rate how important those particular things are to them. For example, avoiding probate. Now, some people don't know what probate is, but really quickly, avoiding probate means that when you pass away, any individually owned assets, money, has to go through the court system called probate that takes time and money. And my biggest pet peeve about probate is that it's public record, meaning anybody in the world can see how much money they had when
Oh,
they died
mhm.
and to whom they're leaving their money. Their will becomes public record. So that's, for example, one of the questions on the questionnaire, the little form that I have them fill out. It's not that long, but again, it gets them thinking and it provides me with what their goals are and their concerns. So how important is it for you to designate who gets your money? How important is it for you to protect your assets, your hard earned money, from having to spend it unnecessarily on taxes, nursing home, or giving it to the government? How important is that to you? How important is it to make things easy for your family when you pass away? So it's going through in this initial consultation those questions, making sure people truly understand the questions and getting their heads wrapped around what are their concerns. Do they have relatives, which I don't encounter often, but once in a while, to whom they wish to leave nothing under any circumstances? And it can be for a variety of reasons. So we address that as well. So it's addressing all of the concerns and showing them what they can do to reach those goals and address those concerns.
I love the fact that you're putting things on there that people may not even know they need, right? It's kind of opening the door to discussion around, I came in here with a certain idea of what I might be thinking about, but oh, there's other things that maybe I'm not even educated about to, be seeking more information. So you're kind of proactively giving them a more comprehensive picture, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah, yeah, I'm educating people. To me, the opportunity to do this is great because I want people to be an educated consumer. And
Exactly.
I hear oftentimes people who've come into my office and they've got a big binder that they've gotten from another attorney with all their trusts, which sometimes don't understand, et cetera. And they say, oh, why didn't our lawyer tell us about that? The possibility of planning for XYZ. Because a lot of attorneys do solely, again, that estate planning piece. They're not looking at how am I not going to go broke in the future if I need care or my loved one needs care.
Yes. I know just from speaking with some older adults that sometimes I think there's a misconception out there that you can just go on the internet and there's some one-page documents that you can kind of download for yourself and print. And if you fill those out, you're prepared. You're prepared for these emergencies, you're prepared for the future. I know there's more to it than that. Can you tell us a little bit about what are sort of the key documents that families really need to have in place to say that they have a good, solid plan?
Okay. Oh, did you see me pulling my hair out?
I'm sure this isn't the first time that you've heard this, right? I printed
Oh,
something off the internet. I'm fine.
oh, yes. And I'm going to give you an example. Everyone pay attention to this. This is an example of what I'm dealing with right now for a client. Why you need a comprehensive power of attorney. First, we'll talk about that for finances, handling monetary matters, filing insurance claims on your behalf. So I'm going to back up. What is, for those people in the audience who are unaware, what is a financial power of attorney? That is the way that you choose to whom you want to appoint the important position of handling your financial matters if you are not able to. So you're in a car accident. You're going to be okay, but at this moment in time, you're not mentally able to and or physically able to take care of handling insurance claims, tax things, filings. And a critical piece, and this is what I'm experiencing right now, and I've seen it many times before, financial power of attorney done by another attorney who doesn't do elder law, who we need. So this woman's brother is in the nursing home. We need to do some planning to protect the assets and get the government program called Medicaid to pay for care. So one of the things that we need the sister to be able to do is give away all of his money. Now you're going to say, well, that sounds crazy, but that's the short synopsis of that situation. In the power of attorney that she got from another attorney, it allows her to gift the money, but it limits that amount annually to the federal exclusion amount. So for example, 14,000 years ago, it was 10 forever. That's all she's allowed to gift, but we need her to gift all of it. So in a comprehensive power of attorney, she would have had that option, for example, in what we prepare. It also oftentimes will say in a form or other powers of attorney we've seen that it says that the person can gift, but not to him or herself. Well, that's the very person to whom you would want to gift the money, because that's who I, setting up my power of attorney, trust. So that's why I want that person to be able to receive that money. So that's an example of either a form that comes off the internet. It won't even maybe have that provision, or if it does, it limits it. And that's a very dangerous place to be. So having a comprehensive power of attorney for finances is critical in a good plan.
Okay, that's good to know. How is that different from someone who can make decisions around your medical care? It sounds like
Sure.
those are sort of two different types of power of attorney or two different documents.
Yes, yes, exactly. They are two different types of documents. The first that I was referring to is financial. So that's, again, filing claims on your behalf, anything that you would be able to do yourself relative to monetary things. The medical power of attorney is also critical to have in place. That will allow you to designate who would make medical decisions for you if you are unable to do that. Because with both of these, if you do not have them in place, then you've got this judge ready to put the hammer down to appoint someone, A, who you may not even know, or B, who you would be just like, oh my gosh, why did that judge do that?
It's a little
I don't
scary.
trust. Pardon me?
It's a little scary to think
Absolutely.
it's out of your hands and in the hands of a stranger.
Absolutely. Not a good situation to be in. So they are very important to have in place.
So having both the medical and the financial power of attorney before you need it is the ideal situation to make these decisions before you're in an emergency or you're in a health scare and have that all ironed out ahead of time.
Exactly.
Good.
Otherwise, it's too late if
Yes.
you don't have it done in advance.
So these are really good pieces for folks if they're jotting down a to-do list. Let's talk a little bit. You referenced earlier having a will and having maybe a trust. I'm sure there are some folks out there that have heard those terms, but maybe don't have full understanding of how they're alike or how they're similar or different.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about the differences or the definitions of those two types of documents.
Absolutely. So there is so much confusion. I mean, I hear it all the time. So a traditional will called a last will and testament is a way that you designate to whom you're leaving your property and, for example, how you're leaving your property. I always say to people, there's two ways to leave property to someone. One, you leave it outright. Think of filling up a pillowcase with cash and poof, throw it over the wall, and it could all disappear into what I call the red Ferrari syndrome. Because if anybody ever left me enough money, that's what I would do.
Right.
Or we put their money in a nice box called a trust. I'm trying to get this so you can.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So this box is a trust. Somebody has a key to the box. The lid can come off at certain increments, ages, periods of life, various to buy a house. So it's all part of that consultation process where we look at that. But the will allow you the opportunity to say, are they getting it poof in the pillow or in the box? But that has to go, and this is a common misconception, in that last will and testament situation, those things, assets that you own, have to go through the court process called probate that we mentioned earlier. So a way to avoid probate is creating a revocable living trust. So because I wasn't able to unblur my background somehow, and I can't really show you clearly the drawing, right? No, it's blurry.
A little blurry.
Okay. So I'll tell you what I drew that you're missing. So think of a revocable trust as a bucket. Okay. So it's a bucket into which you put your accounts. So they're owned by you in this bucket. So my hands are the bucket. You fill the bucket up with your accounts. The bucket has an instruction manual similar to a will, and it says, when I pass away, this is to whom I'm leaving my money. Same way you would do it in a will. But the beauty of the revocable trust is because everything's in that bucket, it flows directly from the bucket to the people or charities. So it's quick, it's less expensive, there's no probate expenses, and it's a lot less headache. And what was one of my key pet peeves about probate? Public. With a revocable trust, it's private. Nobody sees to whom you're leaving your money and how much money you are leaving them. It's totally private.
That's good to
So
know. Yeah,
yes.
definitely makes a difference. So I know that for a will, you need someone who's the executor, right? That person who's the designee, who's going to sort of take that and run with it and make sure all these steps take place. Who is managing the trust? Do you also appoint a family member or a loved one, or if you don't have that person, how do you, what if somebody is single and their children are grown but don't live close by? Are there other options for them?
So to go back and kind of from the beginning of your question, The person who would take over either in these two situations in a trust are called a successor trustee. So they're the backup to you in a revocable trust. And it can be a child or children, it can be a friend. The key is whomever it is must be someone you trust, because you're putting them in a position of really standing in your shoes. So same with the powers of attorney. Financial, you must trust that person implicitly. And medical, you must trust their judgment. And I'm backtracking, I'm sorry, but I also recommend, relative to the medical, because it just came to me, it's important to discuss with that person your wishes. Now, we can't think of every situation, right? But at least your wishes as it relates to some basic medical care, what your thoughts are. Okay, so
That makes
back
sense.
to the successor trustee is the person who would step in when you pass away again or became incapacitated. It can be a variety of resources from whom you pick that person. Now, I do not recommend people hiring a commercial entity per se, because they usually have very high minimum fees and they charge a lot to act in those capacities
Is that
as
like
trust.
a third party organization that will do it if you don't have someone?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. There
And
are
you have to pay them for that service. So,
correct. So
okay.
it's really good. And then we usually, when I'm working with people, we have a first person you've appointed, then we designate a backup to that person in case that person dies before you or is unable to handle your matters. And then we do a backup to that person if you have someone, again, you trust. But the role is similar to an executor or personal representative, but it can also be unlike in that personal representative or executor, also handling things while you're alive if you became incapacitated.
Okay. So that sounds like the most comprehensive option is you're covering a lot of bases, having an entire plan put together in the trust. And you can even control how much money, when the money is shared, on what occasion and what timeline. It sounds like it gives you a little more control over the process than the Ferrari example that you gave. Are there different kinds of trusts? How do you know if someone, is laying out an array of menu options, we want this trust or this trust? How would people know which trust is the best one to go with?
Great question. So yes, there are a variety of trusts, and the two that I educate people about are the one we just discussed, which is the revocable trust. It's this, right? It's the bucket, but you see there's no lid on this bucket. So you may reach in and take your money out whenever you want to. So I'm going to segue into the other type of trust to explain why we educate people about that. And I talked earlier about being proactive and planning in advance for the possibility of protecting assets from having to spend them unnecessarily on your care and having the government pay for your care. So there are requirements if you want the government to pay for your care. The financial requirements are the person in the nursing home, their monthly income. So, for example, in a married couple situation, if the husband's living in the nursing home, his income and only his income must be less than the nursing home monthly income. So, if, for example, the nursing home on average right now is about $15,000 a month for care, and if the person's income is $5,000 a month, pension and social security or whatever that is, they're eligible. They don't look at the spouse's income. But where it gets tricky is the asset requirements. So that's what this next trust is going to look at, how we can protect the assets. Because right now, it changes every year, but minimally, If you are married, the maximum amount of money, not including the house, that the spouse at home is allowed to keep is about $150,000. That's it. So if they have more than that in stocks, bonds, money markets, CDs, retirement accounts in the state of Maryland count towards that as well. If you are single, all you're allowed to have is, I hope everybody's sitting down, $2,500. That is it. And the house that's protected when it's a spouse situation is not really protected when you're a single person, because Medicaid says you can only have a certain amount of equity, and they slap a lien on your house and they will take back every penny they've paid for your care. So, what do we do to help people who are concerned about that possibility and want to protect their assets? So, we create another bucket, but I've got a lid on this bucket. Pretend there's a lid, okay? You may not reach in and take your money out like you can in the revocable bucket. You put a lid on it, and assuming we can only do this if you have someone you trust implicitly, they can reach into your bucket, they can take money out, they can sell your house. So it's obviously has to be someone you trust.
Sure.
And then the money in that bucket with the lid on it becomes protected from the government saying it's yours or creditors 5 years from after you set it up. So there's something in planning for the government program Medicaid called a 5-year look back. Medicaid says, okay, if you want us to pick up your $15,000 a month bill, we want to see what you did with your money for 5 years prior to your applying for that benefit. So when we create this trust, because you're giving up control, they say you gave your money away. But if you get beyond 5 years, all of that money is protected. So let's say we set it up June 1, 2024. June 2nd, 2029, that money is all protected.
Interesting. There's a lot to this. I know we're almost out of time. We have time for one more question.
Okay.
I think the big takeaway is get connected to an expert, right? To find those resources in your local community, get connected to legal expertise to help guide you through this process, to help grow your educational understanding of what is required, all of the pros and cons of each option that's available, so you can make the best and most educated decisions for yourself and your family member.
Absolutely. Well said.
Are there any go-to resources or websites or places that you feel are great starting points for older adults if they were looking just to, read through some information to become more educated about these topics?
There is, we have on my website, we have a downloadable brochure
Oh,
that
that'd be
they
great.
can get information about. Of course, we offer also information about the two types of trusts, the benefits of creating them. There is the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys that probably has some resources there as well.
Okay, those are good. Why don't you share your website with us so anyone who's looking to have a place to go can start there?
Sure, it's felintonelderlaw.com
Okay,
or
great.
felintonlaw.com to make it even quicker. It's F like Frank, ELINTON law. And
Great.
it is downloadable. And if they are interested in just submitting a form, we can send them those two sheets relative to the benefits of creating the two different types of trusts.
Yeah.
And we have some other articles as well.
That's wonderful. I think that'll be a really good starting point for folks who are just beginning this journey and just trying to learn as much as they can. I feel like it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint, right? So there's a lot of information. You really need to sort of take the time to make those decisions for yourself, they're important to get that plan in place.
Yes.
I really appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge and expertise today with our family members. I know they appreciate so much hearing more about this topic. It is really relevant to everyone. We're all going to need planning in place at some point. So I'm super appreciative and grateful that you had the time today to talk with our family members.
Well, it was my pleasure. Happy to have done it.
Well, thanks so much. That I guess that'll conclude our interview for today. And I thank everyone for taking the time to join and invite you to come back to our next Family Matters interview session. Thanks so much, everybody.